Welcome to my channel where we question everything. Today's topic is, actually I don't know, can be categorized under various headings and so on. But what I would like to talk about is an abuse of words and concepts and a misuse basically thereof. And it seems to me this is going to continue because people don't really understand what they are saying. Now, this is going to be a very, very controversial subject. And as I've stated in my initial videos, you have to listen carefully on what is said. There's going to be a lot of trick words that will try to get you onto a side road, and then you probably won't listen to the rest of the video, and then you will never grasp the concept I'm trying to convey. It is not about the specifics, it's about the concept and the idea. Now, a typical example would be 6 eggs or half a dozen. It's the same thing, it's just expressed differently. What I'm trying to say, it's not about the eggs. That's not important. What's important is 6 and half a dozen. Another saying goes, a half empty glass of wine, a full glass of wine. Or a half full glass of wine. It's not about the wine. It's about the principle, how you view it. Is it half full or half empty? Yeah, that's what's the correct saying. Half empty. It's all a matter of how you view things. And that is the concept what I'm trying to explain today. But it's a very, very sensitive subject. As you viewers should know by now, I am a German, and I'm proud to be German. And I do not associate myself by the brainwashed, indoctrinated Germans that are currently living in the country. The type of Germans that have lost their culture, lost their identity, and have become basically woke zombies in their own country. I don't mean those guys. Now, I don't know you as a viewer, but if you are Russian, I believe you are a proud Russian. And if you are British people, you are a proud British people. And if you are American, then you are a proud American. And I have no problems with that. It is human nature. Humans are a species that wants to belong to a group. The group provides some identity I like a sheep. I would say, I know Afrikaans words, but I don't always know the English words. You've got a lot of sheep. They all feel safe. They know their brothers, they know their fathers, they know their mothers, their nieces and aunts and so on, and they feel comfortable because they belong to the group of sheep. And if you really go out of the sheep and you stand alone, then you are afraid, and you are vulnerable, and etc., etc. So everybody would like to be part of a group, and that is how we do. We identify with our culture and also with our gene pool, because our gene pool and our culture usually have developed together. And therefore, that is the reason why we have different nations, and different nations have distinct personalities and character and culture and ways of thinking about certain things. So in this principle, in this video, I'm not attacking the Russians, I am not attacking the Americans or the British, whatever you want to see. So don't misunderstand the message I'm trying to say. It's all about the concept. 6 eggs half a dozen. Half empty, half full glass or white. That's important. Okay. Now, the Second World War had a huge influence on the world affairs. But it all started with World War One, and which World War One actually led then to World War Two, and a lot of people have died in the Second World War. And the general culprit being allocated by history and West is always Germans and Hitler, Adolf Hitler, and his Nazi party. And if I listen to a lot of pro-Russian channels and read the articles, the term Nazi always comes up. And it's always associated with the Germans. Even the radical nationalist groups in Ukraine currently are called Nazis. But this is a wrong assessment. They are not Nazis. They are Ukrainian right-wing nationalists, and they are proud to be Ukrainians, and they have a lot of conservative ideas, etc. etc. It is the same argument you could say is, are the communists in Russia, in the USSR, the same as the communists that were in China, and are they the same communists that are in Cuba? No, they are not the same. They have all communist ideas, but they were not the same. And therefore, it bugs me a lot if people call the Ukrainian nationalists Nazis. And then I go and Google a little bit. And then on the Oxford Dictionary, the definition of a Nazi is, historically, it's a member of the National Socialist German Workers' Party. That is what it is, Nazis. It's a political party that came to power in Germany. That's all. It's nothing more, nothing less. The members of the party, political party, had certain views, just like you get in Germany the AfD and the Green Party. And you get in America the Republicans and the Democrats. It's just political parties that have different views. So if I find now a certain person that is like a moderate, am I going to call him a Democrat? No, you're not going to do that. You're going to call him a conservative or a liberal or a neoliberal, or there are terms for all these views. Standard terms in the dictionary and in political science. But through the years, because the Germans have been constantly bashed for the last 70 plus years, and they've been indoctrinated, and they have to feel ashamed of their culture and their blood and their genetic pools and their bloodlines. And they've been indoctrinated from an early age to be ashamed and take responsibility for the atrocities committed during the Second World War. They have lost their identity. And then the best example is actually when I saw the German soccer team now in the FIFA 22. You know, this is not racist, don't get me wrong, there are 3 black players in the German team. No, they might have been born in Germany, they might have been grown, they have maybe one German parent, that's all fine. But they are not Germans. They don't have 500 years or 1,000 years of genes, German genes. They came from Africa. They didn't come from Germany. Now, I'm liberal enough, well, I'm conservative, but I'm liberal enough to accept that, and that's wokeness, and You know, there are other things about the FIFA 22, things I would have liked to discuss, but maybe I'll make a video about that. But that's about it. In any case, yes, Nazis. Nazis have become a swear word, just like anti-Semitism, racist, pedophiles. No, that's even being done. But LGBT and you are sexist and all this other stuff. They've become strong words, and strong words to such an extent that are being currently abused as a swear word. And once you are labeled with that specific word, then it doesn't matter whether it's true or not. The stigma sticks to you, and society pushes you away or shuns you, whatever the English expression is. So then I would like to talk about this whole story about the Nazis and World War II. And World War II was terrible. You know, history, I'm not a big believer of history. Well, I don't trust history. Because I've showed many times before that there was an African writer who said the phrase that once, until a line gets its own historian, the Hun will be glorified. That means the victor always writes history. And this is especially true in the Second World War. And in all these articles, the guys still refer to the Second World War, the atrocities that were committed, the SS that is bad. They are terrible people. So many Jews were killed. So many people were massacred, etc., etc. The funny thing about this is always the Germans. The Allied forces are totally innocent. And when that happens, when you get a one-sided view, then the red flag should go up. And you should start questioning the narrative. Because nobody is perfect. And as I've explained many times in my military affairs videos, it's a question of two people on the different side of the front line are the same type of people. There will be teachers on this side and there will be teachers on that side. There will be accountants on this side, there will be accountants on that side. There's a general, if you want to consider statistics and so on, there's a general distribution of people. In our army, we learned that 80% of the people are like sheep, 10% are pacifists, and 10% are activists. And these 10% on the boundaries of the population try to get the favor of the 80% sheep. That is how it works. So in the same sentence, you will find that about 6% of all populations are psychopaths with a varying degree. So the top of the 6% would be very little psychopathic, have a little bit of empathy. Oh, by the way, there's the definition of a psychopath is they don't have any empathy. That's 100% pure psychopath. No empathy. They just can't feel. It is how their brain developed. How it is. And because the human body is a very complex, you get variations on that. And you get errors in human brains. And that's why we have transvestites and gay people and so on. Because sometimes it is a physical phenomena that went wrong. I can tell you a lot about that, but that is not part of the video today. So you can look at certain people, they will be criminals. A certain percentage of any population will be criminal, hardcore criminals. Then you will get more people that were made criminals due to circumstances. And then you have normal people. And there's a distribution of these type of people. And a lot of atrocities in wartime are not caused by normal people like me and you. It is the fringes of the society that usually commit these atrocities. And atrocities are committed on both sides of the contact line. They were created by German soldiers, they were done by Russian soldiers, they were done by American soldiers, French, British, whatever. You can name them what they want. There were always soldiers that raped women. Raping your victims has come millenniums of years. Plundering millenniums of years. Did the Romans not do it? Yes, they all did it. That's part of the human psychic. It's part of human being. So atrocities, war atrocities is not something new, and it's committed by everybody. Do the Russians want to hear it? No, they don't want to hear it, but it's true. There is evidence of that. It was even admitted by Putin that the Russians killed so many Polish officers, or so, dealing that 22,000 men. It was admitted. But in any case, so the Germans are bad. Like I said many times, neither my dad or his brothers, my uncles, my granddad's brothers or family, or anybody of the friends of the Germans that I knew would ever be able to commit war crimes. They are part of the 80% sheep. And I would neither do it myself. Why? Because we all have empathy. And empathy, unless war makes me an animal, which only happens in a real fight, when you have hand-to-hand combat, or if you lose your control over your anger and you see your buddy being killed and then you storm forward and you annihilate people and so on in cold blood, then unfortunately at that stage you don't have control over your civilized humanity. But once you have calmed down, you still have empathy, and you cannot kill a person. It is very hard to kill another person. You can talk to anybody about this. You can talk to psychologists also. And that is why the enemy usually has to be demonized, to make them subhuman, in order to ensure that your soldiers will be able to pull the trigger and kill somebody. Soldiers have to be indoctrinated and disciplined. That's another part of discipline, another function of military discipline. Part of that. There's other reasons as well. To follow blindly commands without thinking. But then in the Nuremberg trials, we had the saying, and Germans were prosecuted and found guilty because they were accused of following illegal orders, and they should have refused to do those illegal orders. But then on the other hand, if they refused it, they would have been shot. So are you going to sacrifice your life versus that enemy's life? No, you're going to save your own life. That's human nature. It's survival instinct. This is how it goes. You've got to think about and stand that back and say, if I was in that man's shoe, what would I have done? And that is important. So from the one side, I would like people to stop calling other people Nazis. They are not Nazis. Unless you are a German and you belong to the National Socialist German Workers' Party, then you are not a Nazi. Then you are a nationalist, conservative nationalist, a patriot, a Democrat, a Republican, leftist, new leftist, libertarian, what the hell also all the political concepts are. You are not a Nazi. The funny thing is that, you know, when you go to investigate the swastika, which is the trademark of the Nazis, no, No, it's a modern allocation of that symbol to the Nazi. The swastika has been used over centuries before. You can look it up. You can Google it. It's available everywhere. You know, how many countries have an eagle in the emblem? How many military units or divisions have eagles in the emblems? A lot. So just because you wear an eagle on your shoulder doesn't make you that part of a collective of all the other units that wear an eagle emblem. No, it doesn't. It's that you decided to use it. There's a limit to what you can create that is effective as an emblem. Germans also had eagles. The American eagle. It's not the same. No, it's not the same. And that's why the swastika was used, but it was used by other cultures as well, long, hundreds of years, thousands of years back. Even the Romans had eagles. So the fact that the Azov battalion or the right sector uses some emblems of the Germans doesn't make them Germans. They are still Ukrainians. And the patriotism is towards Ukraine and not towards Germany. They will not defend Germany, they will defend Ukraine. That is what they are doing. But by calling them Nazis is not the correct way of doing it. It confuses the issue. It abuses the word of Nazism and the concept of for what it stands. That is why I don't understand why people, no, give credit where credit is due. Respect the Ukrainian, respect the Russian. I mean, the Chechens are proud, they are Chechens. And they fight as Chechens. So recognize the Chechens as a Chechen group and respect them for what they are. You don't have to respect the Azov battalion, that's not the point. But not all of them are criminals either. Not all of them will commit war crimes. Because why? Because if you are a teacher, then there's a teacher. And if you're an accountant, then there's an accountant on that side. We are all human beings. And statistically wise, we see the world in the same eyes. We just have different viewpoints and different groupings, and we belong to different groupings. Not that I am actually praising the Azov battalion. No. That is not what I'm doing. I don't know much about them. I'm only arguing that they should stop being called Nazis. Because if you tell them they are Nazis, then what image comes up in your brain? Germans. They are not Germans. And then you see the German atrocities. No, what they commit is Ukrainian atrocities, not German atrocities. And then we get to the funny point about this. So, if you think about the Second World War, and you think about all the atrocities that were committed, or alleged atrocities committed by the Germans, then one group stands out, and that is the SS. You know? The SS, Waffen-SS. You even hear it in the Ukrainian nationalists. They talk about the Waffen-SS. Yes, during the Second World War, the Waffen-SS is basically the military arm of the SS, which is Schutzstaffel. That was the military arm of the political party. And they fought alongside the army. They were not part of the army. They were a separate branch. and they were basically fighting in parallel. Now, all my families were in the army. They were not in the SS. But that's not the point. Not the point. But are all SS people war criminals? And did they all commit atrocities? No. Percentage-wise, they would have done it. There would be a higher percentage maybe committed by a soldier in the SS than in the normal army, because these guys are a little bit more fanatic. And fanaticism usually draws a higher percentage of the population. And in the name of their beliefs, they will commit atrocities, like the end, the end justifies the means. That's usually the principle that would apply to them. In any case, so the SS is now the subject of all atrocities. And the Ukrainian forces or nationalists are calling on the SS as an example. Yes, during the Second World War, a number of Ukrainians joined the SS, like in any other countries. They also joined the German army as soldiers. So it's not all Ukrainians fought under the SS banner. But so did other nations, conquered nations, join the SS. Which is fine. But then, unfortunately, the SS branch, the Ukrainian branch of the SS, committed a lot of atrocities. In the name of probably Bandera, so I'm not totally sure, but I will probably read up and make a video about that, because nobody really understands what is the story about Banderas and why are they actually. But just from the intersect, Banderas is not a Ukrainian. He was actually born in Poland, or then Galakia, and then it became part of Ukraine for a while, and then but most of his action were actually in Poland. And then he came to Ukraine, and then he established a certain political party and a grouping and so on, and at the end of the day he became too cocky, and the Germans considered him as a threat and as a coup, and they locked him up himself. And that's Bandera's story, more or less. But it's a lot more complicated and much more involved in that. But he's not a Ukrainian. He's an Austrian-Hungarian. Yeah, Austrian-Hungarian. Now, with all the borders going over during the last 300, 400, 500 years in European history, one has to ask yourself, what the hell are you in any case? Are you Polish, Austrian-Hungary, or are you Hungary, or Austrian, or are you Polish, or Ukrainian, or what are you really? You know, it's borders have been moved so many times. It's very difficult to sometimes pinpoint the heritage. And then we continue with the concept of the SS. So what are the SS being accused of? Oh, yeah, SS are very, very bad people. Now, all war criminals, they have massacred a huge amount of people, even Banderas. They call it pogroms, I don't know, but it's like shooting, killing a lot of people. But who did they massacre? Well, they massacred civilians. And some of the Allied forces actually massacred, or Germans as well, massacred prisoners of war or unarmed soldiers that gave up the flag, and as they gave up, they probably shot these soldiers. Happened on both sides. Don't bluff yourself. It's happened on both sides. So basically, what an atrocity is and what a massacre is and a war crime is that you kill people that cannot defend themselves, whether they are civilians or whether they are unarmed, surrendered enemy soldiers. So basically, if we can agree on this principle, then you as a viewer and I as an editor can take that as a baseline for what is atrocity. atrocities and war crimes. And if I've stated, not only the SS has done it, Allied forces have done it themselves, but the principle remains. So you will always find criminal elements and psychopaths in all nations. Doesn't matter what heritage you are. And it's usually these guys that commit war crimes. And then, unfortunately, you get also certain criminal offenses that became criminal and people of low moral value or conscience or empathy due to the certain circumstances in their youth, and we can agree on that as well. And then we find certain people that due to their culture, they don't view certain events in the same perspective as, say, other cultures look at. A typical thing would be like something like women's rights. That would be a fairly good example. Like in the Muslim world, women are not that, well, they are respected, but they are not given the rights that maybe women will get in the Western world. So as you can see, the human population per se is a complex animal, if you want to look at it like that. And you get various types of people willing to commit atrocities. And some of people that won't do it. Now, the majority, in my opinion, won't do and kill innocent people, because most of the people have empathy. So unless you become an animal and you lose control over yourself, which usually happens in a battle itself, where fear takes over and survival instincts take over, and basically your basic instincts take over, and your cultural, civilized part of your upkeeping becomes second-tier control mechanisms, then it's when you kill people. Because it's not easy under normal circumstances to kill a person. And that is why soldiers usually have to be indoctrinated and subject to propaganda, and the enemy has to be dehumanized so that when the soldier is forced to pull the trigger, then he can do it. And that's why we sometimes have a lot of, they call it post-traumatic stress. Because what the soldiers were forced to do during battle goes totally against their grain, and it becomes very stressful in the subconscious mind. But again, doesn't matter whether you are Russian, German, French, American, the same distribution more or less applies. So, if we can establish that war crimes and atrocities is a killing of innocent people, then for unarmed soldiers, people basically that cannot defend themselves, then we have a starting point. And the most recent example would be the Americans. Wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya bombing, Syria bombing. You know, the Americans call it collateral damage, but it's actually killing of innocent people. And that should be considered as a war crime. But it's not, because the victor basically writes history. And that is how, unfortunately, how it works. But no country is innocent. None of them. So let's take, so every time you refer to the SS, you refer to the Germans as a nation. And then you basically attack me and my fellow Germans. And the principle here applies of racism. You judge us on the behavior of certain elements which you have allocated to a group, and then you judge us on the basic, what the actions of the perceived actions of the group. You don't judge us on individual merits. And that is the definition of racism, and that is what actually being abused. Unfortunately, there's a lot of terms that have been abused throughout the years. Racism is just one of them. Anti-Semitism, sexism. Now, what is the against LGBT? It's now a common thing. Well, words have been twisted, the meaning have been twisted, and once that thing is allocated, assigned to you or described to you, whether it's true or not, the stigma sticks, and well, that's the world that rejects you. But anyway, so let's look at the Second World War. So what has happened in, what have the British done? During the Second World War. It was a stated goal of Winston Churchill to bomb the German civilian population. And what he done is, has bombed the centers of German cities. Not the industrial sectors, not the weapons manufacturing, the civilian population. And the stated goal was to demoralize the civilian population. And here you see a pile of German dead bodies. And this was caused by the bombing of the 3 days bombing of the Dresden city. Deliberately killing innocent civilian people. And if we have recognized the definition of a war crime, then this one fits it 100%. And what makes it even worse is that due to the fleeing of Germans from other countries during the later stage of the war, they were accumulating in Dresden. So the Dresden city didn't only have the inherent population, but an excess of that of refugees from the other countries. And basically it was so bombed. It's not that the other parts of the city were bombed, it's only the center, or the biggest population. Dresden had no military value whatsoever. It was never, should have never been considered as a valid target. But Winston Churchill, who I consider as a psychopath and a war criminal and a coward to the fullest extent of the definitions, and you can read up about it. This is not a hoax. This is not a conspiracy theory. Winston Churchill, in my opinion, was a very, very evil person. So, if you want to criticize Hitler, then you should criticize Winston Churchill as well. Just for the sakes, the fires were so hot that the storm, the air turbulence or the air drafts that were created due to the heat pulled physically bodies into the center of the flames. People tried to attach them against light poles and so on, but they couldn't. The force went. It's like a huge hurricane that is being developed due to the fires. And well, this is a photograph of a person that was totally burned up, a woman. As you can see, these are not nice pictures, but these are facts. So what must I do now? Must I now consider the RAF as war criminals? Because they did all the bombing in Germany. They mostly targeted German cities. And then by definition or by facts, they bombarded the civilian population centers. It was so bad actually in Dresden that then the fighters came, and when the Germans were fleeing, they were strafing them. They were killing, shooting down German civilians by aircraft. Not bombing them, shooting them. Is that not the same what the SS is being accused of? Has any RAF pilot or bomber or crew ever been prosecuted for war crimes? No. Because, as I've said before, the African proverb, until the lion gets its own historian, the hunter and the hunt will be glorified. The historians write the history. The victors write history. Then we can even go to the Americans. Hiroshima and Nagasaki. If you truly understand what the history was, the war was already lost for the Japanese. The Japanese were already negotiating with the Russians for peace deals. The Americans ignored it, want to make a point to the Russians, the power of the nuclear bomb, and then bombed Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Military installations? No. Civilian. How many hundreds of thousands of civilians were killed? Now, the aircraft that actually dropped the first bomb was called the Enola Gray. And I actually read about a week ago that the pilot that actually piloted the Enola Gray died at the age of 91 recently, like a year or a couple of years back. And he stated he clearly never felt anything bad or had any conscience of dropping the bomb and killing 110,000 Japanese civilians. Was that person even prosecuted? No. So now must I, if I blame the SS and abuse the word of the SS as in every single flippin' atrocity on the world, then how should I do now to the American Air Force? How should I call them? Because they clearly committed war crimes. And then we come to another thing. So after the Second World War, there were a lot of German soldiers that surrendered to the Allied forces. We're not talking about the Russians or the Soviet Union, we're talking about the American side. And Dwight Eisenhower actually created more or less about 200 camps for prisoners in the Ruhr area. And this is a typical camp. The spots that you see there are German soldiers. Those are not buildings. Those are physically human beings lying on the ground, unprotected, basically very little food, if no food. Water was totally scarce. No latrine facilities, nothing. And we all know that diseases brew up or explode when there are very pure hygienes. And a lot of soldiers were actually, German soldiers died in these camps afterwards. Now this is against the Geneva Convention. And this is a war crime. But how did Eisenhower say? No, these are not POWs. They are unarmed enemy soldiers. And anyway, it doesn't matter. It's the same concept. You can twist the word as much as you want. The point here is that they are a prisoner of war. Here you can see another photo of an American, and here you can see closer up. See all those German soldiers standing in the middle of nowhere. And then there was a guy, actually, a Canadian writer, James Bucky, from Canada, who wrote a book in 1989. It's called The Other Losses. Now, you can find the book if you want to, and if you know how to just Google, you can find it, download it, and read it if you want to. But I cannot, unfortunately, give you a link because I believe it's probably against YouTube policies. But if you do a search correctly, you can download it. Now, naturally, the Americans say, no. this James guy didn't use the information properly, didn't use the archives properly, he's not a historian, and, well, you know how I feel about any case credentials. For me, it's nothing. As long as you do your research and find the facts, it's all fine. And any logical person and any guy with a little bit of intelligence can interpret facts and the records. But in any case, about 10 American historians of renown try to debunk the statements made in this book. And I've read some of their replies, all their statements, all the excuses that were made. The typical one was, he was describing how a train full of food, there was no food scarcity around there, but there was a train somewhere, I don't know, maybe from Austria or so, was on its way to the prison camp, and halfway it was stopped and returned. And the excuse was given that trainload of food was earmarked for the Red Cross in order to feed the refugees. Well, so the refugees' lives are more sacred than POWs? Is that the argument? No, human beings are human beings. But the Geneva Convention says that you have to treat and feed the POWs the same food that you give to your own troops. So if there was enough food for American soldiers, then there should have been enough food for the German prisoners of war as well. And if the Americans got 2 potatoes and a piece of meat and a piece of bread, then that is a German one should have gone the same. And if there was not enough food, then the Americans should have gone 1 potato, the German 1 potato, the meat had to be cut in half, and the bread had to be cut in half. And that is how it's supposed to be. And if you didn't do that, then you had a crime against humanity and a war crime. And if the people died, then that was a deliberate massacre. So now, Dwight Eisenhower is also a war criminal. And you could put Winston Churchill, Dwight Eisenhower, and Hitler next to each other. And you could put even Stalin next to each other, whether the Russians want to believe it or not. Putin even has admitted of the atrocities in Poland, where the Soviet Union has killed about 22,000 Polish officers. This is admitted. But was anybody prosecuted? No, because of lack of evidence. Winner writes the history. Only Germans are blamed for everything. Bad, bad, bad Germans. So for 70 years, I've been blamed for what other people have done. And it is selective applied. And the German nation has been indoctrinated and bamboozled and feel guilty about the actions of their fathers and grandfathers. I don't know. And currently, Nazism is still being abused by people that don't understand the true meaning of it. Why don't you call them right-wing nationalists? I don't understand this. You know, the swastika is not a new thing or a new thing only used by Germans. It is used by various groupings throughout hundreds of years. How many eagles are used? So the German has an eagle. So does the American eagle. So does the Roman century eagle. There are only there's limitations on the emblems you can create for any unit. So, you know, swastika is not a German unique thing. Then I don't even want to talk about alleged rapes. Yes, there are rape accusations against Russians and so on, but they are the same rape accusation against Allied troops. And the Germans probably also did that. But rape and pillaging is part of war. It has been like that for centuries. Don't you think the Romans did it? Don't you think the French troops didn't do it? Napoleon? Yes, they all did it. And if you want to talk about war crimes, then how far do you want to go back? Because everybody only going back 70 years to the Second World War. What happened in the First World War? What happened about the other wars that were committed? The Napoleon Wars. The 100-Year Wars, the Roman. How far you want to go back? War crimes were always committed by every nation. So why is Germany being singled out? That is what I think I don't understand. So I would appreciate it if somebody would talk to these idiots, well, not idiots, people, and educate them. Stop using racist pronunciations or whatever you want to call it in English. Accusations. And make it a German phenomenon. No, it doesn't. Do I excuse it? No, I don't excuse it. Killing innocent people is still a crime. It's like committing murder. It is actually murder. So if you want to prosecute murderers and so on, then you should prosecute soldiers as well. So I try to convey a concept. It is not specific. Don't take it personally. I try to show you the flip side of the coin. The other side of the story. The half full glass or the half empty glass. 6 eggs or half a dozen. Not about the eggs, not about the wine. It's a way that you view it. And that is what we do in this channel. We question everything. We question the narrative. In any case, this is my story for today. If you like what you heard, I hope you stick until the end of this video, and then I appreciate it. And I hope you understand the message I'm trying to convey. Don't take it personally. See the bigger picture. And if you want, subscribe and spread the word and share the link and whatever is necessary, and leave a comment if you want to. And if you want to disagree, then disagree. I don't mind. We don't have to agree with that, and I will respect your opinion. It's not a crucial item for me. And so until next time then, cheers.